camera, animal camera.
Absolutely.
Well, good evening and welcome to About the Valley. And that's my phone ringing in the background. I don't know who it is, but I'm not answering it. We have an abbreviated group tonight for our kids. Of course, it is the Christmas season, December 1st, 24 days till Christmas.
Be here
Coming
before
fast.
You know it.
But it's driving me crazy. I wish it would stop. There we go. But anyway, we still have two loyal members of the committee that came in, and we want to continue to discuss this book, Our Kids, which is really important because we're talking how things have changed so drastically, and we're talking the last 50 years, you might say.
Yes.
And I was telling you tonight that next January 1st, I show on the top 30 records from 50 years ago. Well, that was 1966. So, and people in my age group, that when we were going out into the real world. Well, 50 years later now, we got another class, the 200th class, to graduate from Northbridge High School.
150th.
150th.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, things have changed a lot in 50 years.
They have, and I think that was one of the key points that Robert Putnam raised in the book, is that over the course of those 50 years, the opportunity gap for our
Yes.
students has increased dramatically.
Yeah, you don't have the same job basis out there. I know back 50 years ago, you could go out and get a job on an assembly line and make fairly good money. General Motors was one right over here in Framingham, paid well and great benefits. And you could even get in there without a high school diploma if they were desperate enough. But, most places wanted it. But it wouldn't be hard to get a job. And I remember people saying, geez, it was great back. You leave one place, you get another job next day. Well, it's not that simple anymore.
Nope.
Even though it's easier to apply for jobs today because of the internet.
It's much more selective.
Yes.
Much more selective.
But you can go out, you can apply at a lot of places by just sitting at a computer. And in most places now, you go on the net to apply.
Right.
But there's not a lot of jobs out there.
Well, I think the jobs that are out there, that people that do not require a college degree or
Right.
technical training past high school, don't necessarily bring in the income upon which a person could start a life for
Yep.
themselves, buy a home, raise a family, where 50 years
Or
ago.
even have a career job.
Exactly.
I don't think people have career jobs anymore.
It's really tough because a lot of these people, a lot of our young students that are going to go out in the workforce, they sometimes have this rose-colored glass look about, gee, I'm going to be able to make a boatload of money driving a truck or something. And
Right.
then they realize that there isn't, unless you're doing it hardcore, you're not going to make a lot of money. And then they're working second jobs and third jobs, and it's a challenge.
But even with if you go and get a degree today, and if it's not in the specific field, even your college degree doesn't carry the weight it used to carry.
True. And I think now that with the added disadvantage of students needing to pay for the degrees in
Big
higher
money.
education, that's big money. They're leaving school in debt,
Yep.
and then thinking with the rose-colored glasses that it'll be much easier to get into the workforce and make those big bucks right away.
Right.
And I think to their detriment, that also adds to some of the issues in the economy we're seeing.
But the thing that I think is interesting is that I do think that many students are misinformed by the public in that they think that a high school diploma just by itself is going to get them somewhere, or maybe even a bachelor's degree is going to get them somewhere these
Right.
days. It's unfortunately it's not the case.
Well, if you get a liberal arts degree, you're not specialized in anything. So a lot of places, well, we don't need you.
Right.
You need a degree in marketing, and now companies that I know when I was in sales, they'd like to have a 4-year degree. Now they want you to have a BA
Correct.
or a business degree.
Right.
We are hearing, though, as we're working through our connections with our career academies, that there are some jobs out there that don't necessarily require the technical training, but they're looking for a type of student that can come in and it would be a good paying job, and they're not necessarily looking for the technical skills, but they're looking for a student who's willing, that they can train. They can, and they'll say, we can provide the training, we can teach you the technical knowledge you need to know, but you need to have the communication skills. You need to have that ability to communicate effectively, connect with others, write well. And that's a challenge sometimes.
Well, the other thing is that some students go to college with this idea that they want to become something that's very specific, and I think that when you start talking about training, it's a lot easier to train somebody that may have a degree in something, but may not necessarily be as specific to a particular part of that, because I think that sometimes what ends up happening is that students can end up going into something and be prohibited from getting into that field because they don't have the necessary credentials to train. You know, they may be overqualified, okay, or they might not be qualified enough. You know,
Well, a school's able to keep with technology too.
That's,
Change is so rapid.
yes.
yes, I agree.
And this is something else that is coming up, and a lot of people aren't realizing it. You know, we see a situation where Carrier air conditioners is going to keep a number of their people here. But those jobs that they have, a lot of those people could be replaced by something else. Not their job going to Mexico, but their job going to a robot.
Correct.
And I think that's what, and nobody's looking at this that much. I think that's what we got to really wake up to, is that the jobs where you could get out of school, go down to the factory, and get a job putting things together, it's not going to be there because it's going to be done by robots.
But you're still going to need people to fix the robots.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. But that's now you're getting into specialties. You know, that's where maybe they have to look at technology, learning how to computer technology, but also you're going to have mechanical skills because obvious robots may be run by computers, but they're mechanical. So, and
well, I think there's a tremendous benefit to STEM education. STEM education is vital, in my opinion. And actually, they don't call it STEM anymore; they call it STEAM.
To add the arts.
The arts, because there is a lot of artistic parts to the STEM careers. So, you know, math is really important. Science is important, and obviously the technology, which kind of weaves together both of them, is extremely beneficial to these students.
well, learning you talk about when you're talking the arts, we're talking literature,
Right.
Music, things like that. Actually, that helps you to learn how to learn, and to be more alert to what's around your surroundings. I know that learning English literature or American literature is not going to teach you how to work computers, but it's going to. You can learn to comprehend.
Critical thinking skills
Yes.
that are necessary.
So if you have to read a book, a technological book, you're going to be able to comprehend what you're reading because you learn comprehension through studying literature. I don't think a lot of people realize that part.
There's been a saying in education that surfaced a few years ago that said the students that are in our schools right now, we are preparing them for jobs in 20 years that we don't even know what they'll be. They don't even exist yet.
That's true.
So I think that's the challenge for us, is trying to think ahead, be prepared, prepare our students, but we're confined with limited resources. So utilizing our resources to the fullest extent possible and integrating those to have real world applications for the students. How do we integrate that English literature and make it meaningful for our students now? Especially in the technological world where they're surrounded by technology and books online, and it's hard for them to get into things like Shakespeare.
Well, think of it like this. I mean, 25 years ago, the internet was not really there. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't as widespread as it is today. And a lot of the technology that we have today, 25 years ago, was
non-existent.
And
it wasn't even dreamt.
And so folks like myself, and I think I can speak for Dr. Stickney as well, and probably for Harry, we have to train ourselves to learn these technologies, because otherwise we're in trouble.
We ask a student.
Well, I do that.
Well, when you talk about that, it was there if you saw it. I'm a Trekkie, and I remember the yeoman walking up to Captain Kirk in his seat and handed him a tablet that he would sign. Now tablets are the mainstay. Or the communicator, which ended up being a flip phone. Now the flip phones are gone.
Yeah.
But when you talk about their tricorder that could do all, what do you think a smartphone is today?
Yeah.
It is interesting to.
So you see a lot of that stuff. I mean, people, it's like, even go back further. Jules Verne, who looked at a lot of things like submarines and travel to the moon, and in the way it was done, ended up actually happening in a lot of cases. So you see, some of that is out there, and that's where literature probably comes into play. I mean, I love reading Isaac Asimov. If you're familiar with, not a lot of people are, but he's a science fiction writer. I, Robot. Everybody remembers the movie I wrote. Well, he wrote that book. A lot of that is coming about today. So, I mean, a lot of that is forecast, but you got to find it.
Right.
It's pretty. It is scary to think that. You know, when you start saying that, and because let's face it, Star Trek was around in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And
I used to make sure I got home at night to watch it. Loved it.
I know you mentioned, 1966 to today is 50 years. And
yeah.
I'm going to be soon a 50-year-old, so it's
Yes.
Wow.
it's just
It flies, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
But we were talking, getting back to our
Good.
kids. We left off at the last time getting into the idea of mentors.
Yes.
Here's something else that we couldn't have foreseen 50 years ago, is the number of single-parent households.
And the number of students and children being raised by grandparents or
Yes.
other relatives or
Yes.
foster parents.
Yeah.
The nuclear family and the traditional family no longer looks traditional.
It's almost become the norm. Not just acceptable, but the norm for women to have kids out of wedlock, and those kids to be raised, because they have to get a job and work. The grandparents end up raising the kids. And of course, grandparents today are in better health and younger in many ways than their grandparents were. I mean, I'm 68 years old. I remember my grandfather was 68. He was 60, really 68. I mean, he acted old. I don't feel old. I don't act old.
You don't look old either.
Right, but this is what's happened with the boomers that are in their they're not acting like they're in their 60s. They say the 60 is the new 40. So they're taking on these responsibilities that would never happen back then. Unless
you
it was,
wonder, I mean, going back to the whole technology aspect of it, is technology enabling that to happen? The 60 is
well,
the
and
next
a lot of
40.
it because it's a lot easier to, you don't have to work as hard.
Right.
You don't have to work as hard cleaning your house. I mean, you got a robot now that'll vacuum your floors, you know. I mean, we have microwaves, and cooking is quicker.
Mhm.
You don't spend the whole day doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so,
But you know, the thing that I think is important is, you know, like when we talk about the nuclear family, as it's called, it, it's almost, I hate to say it this way, it's becoming the norm almost that individuals may not necessarily be getting married, but they're having kids.
right, that's another thing, yeah.
So then, you know, they're in long-term relationships with people with kids, and as
But
long as
not
you,
making that permanent commitment.
right. But if you make, you know, having the permanent commitment definitely instills a sense of trust, but that's not necessarily what the people today are thinking of. I mean, women are having children later,
Yeah,
and and some of them are choosing not to have children at all.
right. Well, a lot of that too is, you know, the advancement of birth control.
Right.
Makes it a lot easier not to have children.
But it's you know, I think getting back to the whole mentoring part, I think that there's a lot of folks like ourselves that the kids can look up to, and to say, well, what can I become, or what's necessary to be in the business that we're in.
Yeah. Have we lost that? I mean, the kids lost the heroes.
I think it's changed in the aspect that the heroes now are very different for our children
Yep.
than they were 50 years ago, where now our children have the exposure to the sports figures on TV, the social media figures, the Kardashians of the world.
Right.
And they're looking at those people and rock stars. They're looking at those people as being role models and not necessarily the people within their community that might be working in providing quality moral value to the community. Now they're on their phones, they're on the computer, they're watching movies and TV, idolizing figures that may not necessarily be the appropriate role models for what we would look for traditionally in our children.
I totally agree with you on that.
Well, I remember back in the prior to the 1980s, they said you couldn't get elected president if you'd been divorced.
Oh.
And the first one that broke that, broke the window on that one was Ronald Reagan. And, you know, and they said, well, you couldn't be, and that's one reason that you had John Kennedy, who probably would have got divorced from his wife, but they stuck together for that reason, and, you know, and there probably were others. I mean, we know
Last
that,
50 years.
we know now that Roosevelt had a girlfriend on the side that Eleanor just tolerated, you know, but it was not talked about.
Right.
Today, it's why we get up to the point where Jimmy Carter, not Jimmy Carter, I mean, Bill Clinton,
It's headline news.
yeah, and it
It's
was
nothing
considered
they're trying to hide.
no big deal anymore.
Right.
So I mean, we're actually lowering our moral standards, and nobody is concerned about it.
And I think it confuses our children when
Yeah.
we have these people that we talk about over and over. And children, we put them into the position that they assume that that's a positive
Right.
because they're in the news. I was at a conference today where the conversation was, are we teaching our children skills to know fact from fiction on the internet? and in the news. And someone jokingly said, are we teaching, as adults, do we know the difference between fact and fiction in the news?
Exactly.
And it's very true. It makes it very difficult to vet out who is a positive role model.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that in terms of some of these role models or supposed role models that are out there on the internet that these kids are looking at, whether it be a rap star, whether it be an athlete, whatever. A lot of these students, a lot of these kids are getting the idea that I can become a star and make lots of money and just live off my royalties. And the issue is that there's a lot of hard work that goes into becoming that star that they didn't see.
Well, I mean, how many times you heard of someone getting in trouble and getting killed, say shot by the police or something, and they say, "Oh, he was turning his wife around. He was going to have a rap record." Yeah, I mean, you actually hear that, and he was being a father to his 3 kids with 3 different mothers. I mean, and it's no big deal. In the 1950s, and I'm a music guy, there was a song that came out, I forget the name of the artist, it was called 60 Minute Man. And it couldn't get airplay because a lot of stations said there was a sexual connotation to it. Look at what they play today. And the thing is, this stuff doesn't have to even get on the air anymore, where it could be regulated.
Right.
It's on the internet, and of course the internet is wide open. I mean, it's wide open to everything.
It's
There's
also on satellite
no
radio
censorship
all over the
whatsoever.
place.
Well, and I think both of you have brought up good points where you were saying, Harry, that life is so much easier now with the microwave and all of these things, that these modern conveniences where, to your point, maybe our children are not seeing what the payoff for hard work is. Everything looks so easy. I'll go and I'll make $1 million in royalties. I'll just put music on the internet. And the whole benefit of what it is to work hard and be dedicated and have that commitment to something.
Yep.
And do we have role models for these children that exemplify just that? That hard work pays off, and dedication and living well, paying it forward. Where are those pieces for our children now?
That's a big one to pay it forward.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, you got the sports speakers have got to make it known that I didn't get there by not
Good
working
point.
hard. I mean, Larry Bird, they said, "Oh man, you're such a great athlete." I remember somebody interviewed him one time, and he said, "I practiced from 6 in the morning till midnight,
Dedication.
constantly.
Yes.
That's how I got where I am."
Yeah.
You take a quarter. I lose my memory all the time. It must be it's my age coming on. Tom Brady, when he
There
was
will
out,
be a robot for that soon. Don't worry about it.
it's true. Tom Brady was out for 4 games. He didn't stop practicing. He constantly practiced. He couldn't do it with the Patriots,
Right.
but he did it by himself.
Right.
You can't stop. You got to keep going. And a lot of these kids don't realize that. I don't think they realize that you got to work hard at it.
Well, the other piece of it, when we start talking about mentoring and such, I mean, being an educator myself and Dr. Stickney as well, you got to educate yourself continuously.
Well, you
It's
constantly
not
update.
It's not a okay, we're done. We're done. I know everything about what I'm doing.
No, because it changes all the time.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. The whole lifelong learning piece and the
Exactly.
dedication to, choosing what is good research that we continue to utilize and employ.
Well, in the 20 some odd years that I've been an educator, I've seen a lot of changes, and I've also learned a lot about myself and the children that I'm teaching. And if one of my students came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to be a teacher," actually I had that conversation with a student and said, "What do I need to do?" And I told him, I said, "This is what I've done so far, and I got umpteen credits above a master's degree."
Yep.
And that's the dedication. that they need to see. It's not going. You're not going to make a lot of money without some dedication to
Well,
what
any
you're
job,
doing.
you got to constantly keep learning on your
Right.
job. I mean, just working here, and I'm not as involved as some of the guys that work here, but you got to constantly update yourself. There's new technology coming out all the
And
time.
equipment and
Yeah.
exactly.
And any field you go into, it's constant changes. But constantly educating yourself is not a bad thing. I love to read. I'm hoping kids never lose that. And I'm afraid that could happen. But you can't learn from watching a TV, even if it's an educational channel. You got to sit down and open that book up. That's where, because you got to ingest it. You got to see it. I think you really take it in much better when you read it.
And I think it goes back to that whole critical thinking piece where students need to, there's so many skills that are employed. The ability to gain vocabulary, to gain
Oh,
that
yes.
sense of speaking in a manner, it affects speaking and listening and being able to speak effectively and grammatically correctly.
Reading brings that about for you.
It does. It does.
If you read well, you'll write well, and you'll communicate.
Much more effectively with that increased
It's
vocabulary.
amazing, and if you look, anybody who's been successful in life, other than in sports, but even football players have to learn strategy.
And critical thinking.
Yeah,
Being
and-
able to
yeah.
synthesize information, analyze it,
You go
put
in
it
the military
in action.
today, even the infantrymen has so much technology now that they have to learn. And you got to read field manuals.
Well, the other thing is that when these individuals, let's say, go into the military, they have their superiors that hopefully are going to teach them well, and that's mentoring right there.
True.
But-
And the same thing holds true with pretty much anything. Is if I wanted to learn about the TV studio, I'm not going to come in and do all the stuff myself. I'm going to be talking to you folks,
Right.
and I'm going to learn it. And yeah, it's going to be a hard, maybe a little bit difficult and challenging, but I think there's such a positive to having somebody to emulate.
Well, I think people learn much more effectively by working with others.
I agree.
But how do you get mentors today? How do you get mentors to get out there, especially with the kids in high school today? And not a lot of your teachers, they can't wait for that bell to ring at 2:00 either.
We have many that stay after,
But
just
you do
because
have some.
they
Speak
know.
for
Oh
myself.
yes,
I stay after
because
a
I
Yeah.
lot.
think they are
Which is
dedicated.
good, but you need that. That's what you
Yes.
need. You need you have to have people. We got volunteers here. We wouldn't have anything without volunteers. But you have to make that. You need people to make commitments. Are you
So-
finding? Is it coming back? At one point, I think there was fewer people making that commitment than today.
Actually, it's interestingly enough, we have two different venues where we are trying to, we have one plan, so to speak, within the schools where at the beginning of the year we had invited all the teachers to really kind of look out for a student, to take care of a student and just do that check-in. And one of our staff members said, we used to have a mentoring program that was truly a mentor program in its truest sense, where the mentors received training, so they knew it wasn't just necessarily
You just
an
didn't throw them out
adult.
there.
Yes, we didn't throw them out there because now some of the challenges that our young people
Yeah.
are coming forth with are they're very challenging between the topics that students deal with. Not that they weren't dealing with them 50 years ago, but it's much more prevalent now.
Yeah.
So within the schools, we've looked and reached out to mass mentoring to assist us with this. They are so booked and so overwhelmed with different organizations and groups around the state wanting this training to be able to reach out. We're working collaboratively with the Whiten Community Center and the Rockdale Youth Center to try to
Yeah.
assist them.
They
and
do a
have,
great job
They
over
do,
there.
and they're looking for more mentors and reaching out to our high school students to go over and mentor. So we're trying to train our high school students as well, but we are on a search for adults to assist us with that.
Well, speaking on the, on the political level, I've been approached by a number of students from Northbridge High saying, they'd be interested in knowing what it's like to be part of town business,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gotten them in touch with the town manager and other individuals, and it's important to realize that the people that are out there are people first.
Yes.
All right, and they put their pants on the same way.
Well, regardless of who you are, we're all just average people.
Correct.
And I think there are so many people in the community that already serve as mentors and do a wonderful job with that, whether they are people in our the NAC and work with the local parishes and churches and do the activities that reach out to the youth. There are so many opportunities for our youth now to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, the Young Neighbors in Action
Yes.
out of St. Pat's, great program. I mean,
But are you getting to the right kids? I think that's a part of the problem too.
yes, I think that's a question that needs to be asked.
As educators, you see that you got some parents that show up that are interested in what their kids are doing. They show up at school. They're there on a parent nights and stuff. And then you got others you don't see. And those are the kids that you really have the problem with. Because they're not interested. They're less interested than their kids are.
I think in some cases it's not necessarily a matter of interest, but a matter of time. I think where they're working 2 or 3 jobs, and in cases where we have a blended family, or a family with one parent, where between needing to stay home to watch younger children or working 2 jobs, there are challenges there. So I don't think, for some it might be a lack of interest, but I think overwhelmingly it's probably other factors as well. Transportation. Many of our families, if curriculum night if the weather is bad, we won't see them because they have to walk.
Right.
So there's many different factors.
Yeah, and then there's some students that you are very good at masking what's really going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And then so they might be taking care of a sick parent, or maybe sick grandparents, or what have you. Unless you make that connection with the student, unless you know what's going on in that student's life, that could be the thing that's holding them back from extending forward.
Yeah, I think educators today have a much bigger role than they had 50 years ago in the family life alone.
Well, and to that point, that we have students that come into school that have been out working all night long because they are the breadwinner and they're supporting their families and
That's hard,
supporting.
isn't that?
It
That's
is,
almost
and
impossible to believe.
supporting
in high
younger
school.
brothers and sisters. Some of our high school students are
And these are probably kids that know they need the education so they can get a
Yes.
better job. And
So-
are doing their best to get there, but that's putting a real burden on them.
Yeah. We have some younger students and some older students that are dealing with the challenge of having both parents or a parent battling drug addiction
Yes.
and
Yeah,
trying
and
to keep that and be stoic on the outside, and then we wonder why they're not able to focus in school.
There's a lot of other. I mean, they're dealing with a lot more baggage
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we can't even articulate, and that's a scary thought because on the surface, a student may look really together, but in reality, the kid's screaming for help. And I think that when you when you're dealing with a mentoring situation, it may take a little while to get through to some of those troubled kids. But when you reach that, when you make that connection, when they trust you enough to say, "Hey, I'm willing to try this," you've opened the door, and you
Right.
better not let that door shut.
Right. Because they don't need one more person in their
Exactly.
life that, that is teaching them trust not to trust someone.
But then here again, you've got your own families and your own problems. Can you take? How can you take on? It's asking a lot.
Hmm. And as you were saying, if more and more and more fall to the teachers, where
Yeah.
they are trying to be that sounding board, it's not just worrying about did the homework get turned in. It's worrying about, the student who's falling asleep in class, who may not be feeling well, the student who might be battling mental illness, and trying to figure out what the signs and symptoms are, and how that student's behavior might be a cry for help in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much different today.
Hmm.
We wear many hats
Yeah,
as educators.
Yes.
Many.
and you, Jim, worked in more affluent systems, and you still, and the problems are there too, aren't they?
Oh yeah, you'll see problems in every system.
Yep.
Yes.
I've worked in affluent systems. I've worked in not so affluent systems. The problems are there.
Yep.
There may be more students that are showing symptoms of it, but there's the kids are still, they still need to have positive role models.
Hmm.
And if the thing that I really enjoy is seeing students connect with a teacher or teachers.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they connect with that one teacher and they feel that, oh my gosh, I got somebody to talk to, before you know it, you can really influence a lot of kids' lives. And that's really important. And the thing is that you don't necessarily get the gratification immediately, but you'll get it maybe 2 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, when you see these kids and they go, I really appreciated what you did for me. You really showed me something. That's what is really what drives, I think, many educators, is to have those experiences.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't realize how much of a mentor you are until you see these kids get older.
Right.
I was involved in Scouts for many years, and I run into these kids now, and they're almost middle-aged. And it's amazing how, and they remember how you influenced their lives. They tell you about it, and it makes you feel good. That, well, maybe you helped one person along the way somewhere, but I just wondering what we can do as a society to correct this today. I mean, I just don't know where we're going to go.
Well, I think I've been thinking a lot about that from a community perspective. And as you know, I love to walk around and chat with people around
Yes.
the history of Northbridge in and of itself. And I'm intrigued by the stories about how strong the park system used to be.
Oh.
And the neighborhood parks and the ball teams that started historically back when the mills were here.
Well, the mill sponsored them.
Yes.
Those days are gone. You're not going to have companies coming in and sponsoring teams anymore. It doesn't happen.
I would love to see, and here's where I'm going to ask Jim to put his selectman hat on here. I would love to work collaboratively. I'm already looking at grants. I think I had mentioned this last time around.
Yes.
Bringing in a summer lunch program, something to engage the students where they can come together, get lunch, work in the garden maybe, have a salad for lunch, do some cooking, sit down and read a book with someone and do
Well-
the literacy. But then again, have the opportunity to maybe have some organized events all the way around Northbridge, in Rockdale.
They used to have a great playground program all summer
Yes.
long, but because of budget cuts, it disappeared.
Well, they also, what's funny and ironic is that I was talking to John Berkowitz about this about half hour before the show aired, and we were talking about over in Linwood the basketball courts that are out there, When those basketball courts were in great shape, you used to drive by there, and there would be parking. I mean, you couldn't find a space in the parking lot,
Right.
and you'd see the lights going, and the kids were just having a blast. Now the courts are in disarray. They're not upkept as much, and so the program kind of fell by the wayside. But these are opportunities for these kids to get out there and actually do something, other than just hanging out on the street corner with their friends. That's the important
Well,
thing.
the summer program they had here, you know, kids went to worked with GIMP,
Yeah,
making
the
different.
organized activities.
We still got the 4 squares court out back here.
Yeah.
That was painted on the asphalt. They had picnic tables out there, and these kids. And then there was organized things as well. They had organized games between the playgrounds, as well as I remember as a kid, we had a bus that took us to Kiwanis Beach, which was the end of Border Street. Of course, we had a town beach, but we had to close it because here again, we didn't have the
Right.
funding for the lifeguard.
I would love to start a park appeal and somehow look to revitalize, even on a minimal scale. And
I think even on a minimal scale, starting something,
yes,
looking at what we're doing for our youth in this community, because
You know, we
the
got
youth in this community is going to turn to something else, such as drugs
right.
and alcohol
Mischief.
and getting into trouble, and that could be prevented very
Yes.
easily by having the students have some sort of an outlet. And what's really important is to have some sort of parental supervision or mentor supervision with them, because they can't. You just can't say, okay, kids, go out on the ballpark and just go out and have a blast. I'll see you later. You can't do that. You have to show them. You have to show them that, gee, this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to do it, and get them instilled. And then what ends up happening is that if you can mentor a kid appropriately, those mentees will become your mentors.
yes,
And then before you know it, you got yourself a program that will just continue.
You know, we got a Little League program, but I see these kids come in, for crying out loud. They got bags loaded with baseball bats that cost $100 a piece
100?
or better, yeah.
Like 200.
I mean, so you take, you know, some of these kids that come from low-income families,
Can't afford it.
can they afford to join these Little League teams?
right.
Will they have them? Even, you know, because a kid can't come in with all kinds of equipment. I think they need an unorganized league or a lower profile
The pickup
league.
games
Yeah,
where you could just
Yeah,
go to the
pickup games.
playground and
Yeah.
pick teams, and even if you didn't have a full team,
right.
you
That's what we
made
did.
up a game. And I think that was another piece that they had discussed in the book as well, is the importance of having those outside activities and interests.
We
for
don't see that.
children.
We don't see that today.
We don't. And I think the school committee addressed this past week, looking at, we know that in addressing budget and finances, that we had raised fees. We're looking at coming back and being able to put caps back on athletics to help some of our families re-engage and realizing the importance of these
Right.
activities for the students. That, you know, we seem to, at least for this year, we have found that balance that, you know, the families need the relief, and we know that.
And it's not just sports and athletics; it's other types of fees that may be associated with, like drama club. If there's, there's
Yeah, because not everybody an athlete. Not everybody wants to be an athlete.
Band, music lessons, instrument rentals.
I guess the thing that I felt really proud of this year is going out to some of the football games and seeing Jim Verdone and his marching band, and
Yeah,
I've been watching that marching band evolve. And you want to know something? It's getting really good. And you want to know why it's getting good? Because he's doing a good job mentoring these kids. And they
Well-
keep coming back.
Well, he had a mentor because I happen to know he was on the marching band at UMass.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was pushed into him.
Yeah.
And he loved it. So when he came here and took the job, he said, "I'm going to have a marching," because they didn't have a marching band for
Oh,
many
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Right.
They were
He's-
they were taking those. I remember because I think my daughter was one of the first students in the marching band, and she came home with this box with the uniform in it that hasn't been used in probably 15 years.
Yep.
And I'm like, holy cow!
Yeah, they were not pretty.
So, I mean, they hadn't had a marching band for many, many years.
And now we have middle school students.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
So continuing that pipeline
Yep.
and building that, and that's something that's very
But
important
we
to
have
us.
such a great asset here with the youth center and the White Community Center.
Yes.
And they could work with the town, because here again, it's monetary. You have to have the money. You have to pay the staff. You have to buy equipment.
Well, it wasn't too long ago. I'm going to say maybe 10 years ago, where they ended up having the summer program funded.
Right.
And they had all sorts of summer program activities all around this town. As soon as that budget dried up, there went the program. And yes, I think that the White Community Center does great work
Yes.
with our youth, no doubt. I guess the
And it's
question,
all on donations,
right?
Yes, nonprofit.
The thing that I, as a selectman and also a member of this town, I want to see us do something from a town perspective more, because I think there's too much reliance. I mean, the White Community Center is doing as much as they can on their limited budget.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we do more? Why can't? Because I'm a firm believer that whatever we do for these kids is going to pay off big
Yes,
time, because they're not going to get in trouble. They're not going to do things that they're not supposed to be doing. They're not going to get into drugs because they're not going to have the time to do it, because they're going to be in activities that they really
Well, that's
enjoy.
where you need to bring back the summer youth program that town had.
I'll bring that up
Playground
at my next
program, but-
meeting.
I'll join you.
Here
Monday.
again, you need to hire, you can get high school or college
Yeah.
kids to run the program, but they need to get a little something for it.
Yes.
They're going to go look for summer jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only time to make some money
Right.
in between school.
But it's not it's the money, but it's also the experience.
Oh, it's a great experience.
You could write that on your resume.
Well, for a high school kid, it's a great thing to be able to put down. If you're a junior in high school or a senior, you put on your college resume. You want to get into college. They're looking for people that are. You can't just get into college. You have to show you're active in the community and things like that. Well, it's a great thing. But here again, they still like to get a little something for it. They're putting in their days.
Right.
There's a lot of emphasis. Like Young Neighbors in Action from St. Pat's, and the Congregational Church does their own summer
But here again,
activities.
are you
Pleasant
getting the
Street
right
does
kids?
as well.
But you're right, and I agree with you on that. But it's like you got these packets of kids who are doing things in their various churches and other organizations. Why can't we somehow tap into them as a whole and put the message out there and say, hey, you can help the town out as a whole.
Right.
That would be really good.
Even if we could get the senior center involved as well, because I'm sure that we might have some seniors out there that would be interested in mentoring and being a little more active in the community as well, and being out in the.
And I think we give some little bit of tax relief to them too at times.
There's something
would
you could
be-
do right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think someone would love to get involved. They just have to be asked.
Yes, I agree.
Well, you got a program now where you can work for the town and get tax relief.
That's what I mean.
So why not extend that in that type of job? If they're qualified in some ways, they might enjoy working with the kids.
I mean,
We
I'd love to see the beach reopen.
I agree.
But there again, you have to have a qualified lifeguard, and you
Right.
got to pay for a qualified
And
lifeguard.
the
it's not-
liability
Yeah,
as
the
well.
liability insurance for
And the
our
liability
beaches-
is high, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
That was probably the biggest part of the biggest killer.
Yeah, because you don't want to.
Which is unfortunate today. We didn't, back when I was, Ross Rajat worked very hard to get the electric pond opened up
Oh,
for
yeah.
swimming.
Yeah.
And they brought in sand and they built a raft, and that was done by volunteers, by the way. It's when I was a kid,
Wow.
and I spent probably 3 or 4 summers there. I was there all day. I get on my bicycle, ride down there, and that was it, man.
And you probably have the most amazing memories of that time.
Oh, yeah.
And friends that you were with.
Yeah,
That's what we need to build for our children now.
right. No, it was a great time. I had a lifeguard on duty all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm sure the liability was a lot lower too.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, I think that.
Well, litigations have changed a lot of that.
Unfortunately, litigation expenses have increased pretty
Yeah.
much exponentially. But
People sue at the drop of a hat today.
but I would I would like to see maybe Dr. Stickney and others come forward, and we can discuss this at a selectmen's meeting and bring it up, because I do think it's something that needs to be addressed, and soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the kids in trouble today just don't have a mentor in the family.
I think the mentor piece is huge. Having a purpose, having that organized activity, having that supervision, and just knowing that there's someone there's a counselor there that's at the park.
Right.
That you might be there playing at the park in the summer, and maybe it's nothing that's organized, or you drop into a craft activity, but knowing that there's someone there, if you had a problem, that you could
talk to,
seek out,
Yeah.
talk to,
'cause
and
a lot
utilize our teens and our.
Because I mean,
in the
a
community.
lot of the teens that are out there are crying out for that, because they're not getting enough of it from their home life potentially, or they're getting it from other negative sources. That if we can, show them the positives of living a clean life and a good life, and the power of earning your paycheck and feeling good about it. I mean, that's really important.
And connecting with others
Oh,
in a
big time.
positive, appropriate manner.
Yeah, collaboration is important.
Yeah.
Well, I think, what mentors tend to be are the local heroes, not the people on TV, but the people
Right.
you see day to day that have been done well for themselves, and they can show the kids, look, you can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of getting out there and working hard at it.
And having and going back to this whole looking at a mentoring program from a town perspective, having a couple of students, having a couple of kids that really are have a base of friends. You could use them to get other kids
Oh,
involved.
yeah.
Yes.
And these are kids that you wouldn't necessarily touch.
Well,
if
that's how
you-
scouting works. A lot of times it draws kids in that are there, will bring other kids in.
Right.
Right.
And there's a good program there. Unfortunately, we had a troop in Rockdale here, but it dissipated because the Cub Scouts dropped off. And the Cub Scouts ended, and that was parents into
Yeah.
fighting that caused that to
Yeah.
end. You couldn't get to keep the Boy Scouts going because you didn't have the feeder. But we got a great troop in Whitensville, and
155.
yeah, and there's a 150 as well. So
And I think that's been a change along historically as well, where there used to be so many more opportunities in
Right.
terms of Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I don't know if there was 4-H here, but things like that.
I think there was one many years ago. I wasn't involved with it, but
And those are dwindling as well.
Yeah.
So again, those connections, the mentoring.
you had JC clubs. You don't hear about those
Yeah.
anymore like you used to, which was mentoring kids to get into business.
Well, I'm going to put out a personal plea to people out there in the audience that may be watching this. If you have any ideas for us that are beyond what we may have talked about, get in touch with Dr. Stickney, get
Yes,
in touch with
please.
myself.
I think if you put it on the agenda of the Board of Selectmen, I mean, those meetings are the most watched on our channel. There's
Must
no two ways
see
about
TV.
it. They're well watched. But it brings attention to it, and also the press could pick up on it.
Yeah.
And you can start, if the ball would start rolling.
Maybe we
agree.
need a subcommittee.
That may be a possibility, yes. I think
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I was happy to see the playground and rec, they got some money to put up the new swing set over here.
Oh, nice.
And I see kids using it all the time.
Mhm.
They were using the old one, but I see them using the new one now.
Well, and I think I know from firsthand, even it's expensive to maintain and keep up, and not to mention the liability. Just looking to try to remulch the playground at Balmer is
Yep.
$10,000
Oh my-
just to blow in new mulch. And it's necessary, it needs to be
Yep.
done. So if that's one small component, trying to maintain the playgrounds and make sure that, you know, the asphalt is in good shape, that we have the markings for Foursquare, that the basketball nets are in good condition.
We
Somehow
had a
getting this-
basketball court out here for many years
Yeah.
on the side, and actually it was lower than the parking lot. And the fire department would come in the winter and flood it.
Oh,
You could skate on it. But then the basketball stands got bent hit by cars, and who knows, I remember one time a kid was running a drive, drove up on the fence, was sitting up on a fence like that down here. I said, parking lot is not a area for learning to drive, but you know, I mean, these people are not, they don't take care of what we have like they used to.
well, maybe we need to try and teach that again.
Right. Well, anyway, we're reaching the end of our time here. Are we going to do this again? You think you'll be able to get your committee together and talk again?
We can certainly try.
I mean, keep the ball rolling.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I think this is really important.
I know we didn't get a good turnout tonight, but here again, it's start of the Christmas season. People are busy.
Well, I think if we have a course and a plan for action, that now
Yep.
we have a topic and something that we were able to, that there was a takeaway from this project,
Yes.
that we can move forward
Yeah,
into the community.
I think you really got to bring this up on the Board of Selectmen.
And
And
I mean, the agenda has been set. I don't know
For
if it can
Monday,
be
well, not
changed,
well.
Maybe in the future.
but yeah, we can get
Next
it
year,
on
wait till
there.
after the holidays when people are more into what's going on now.
I think that, you know, I'm gonna pursue it. Yes,
And
got my word on that.
you got Ted that works miracles with that budget. He finds money somehow. I don't know how he does it, but he comes up with money every now and then.
Well,
You know, and
A reallocation.
yes, yeah, but there are things that can be done with limited amount, but primarily getting volunteers.
Yeah. I think we have people
Didn't
in
we
the
had
community
the
that can
youth?
help us as well.
Didn't you have a youth committee for years? Something to that extent. I forget what they called
there
it.
was something. I mean, I think it was before my time as being on the select board. But,
Yeah.
But there was something.
It died out.
Yeah.
But look at those kids that wanted the skateboard park.
They fought for it.
They fought for it, came to town meeting, got it passed.
Well, and they're still trying to make improvements.
Yeah.
I know that in the honor of Jimmy Poulin, that
Yep.
his friends are still there looking to. They've raised enough money to redo the blacktop, and they want to make changes to that small ball field and park.
So see, I
There
mean,
are
it can be
people.
done, and get them involved. It'd be amazing what could be
Yeah.
done.
Power of people.
Yes.
Yes.
Power of
Oh,
people.
we gotta go. They're giving me the signal. Okay, well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Harry.
Have a nice Christmas,
Thank
Same
you.
to you.
and
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody out there.
we'll be back next week. If I can't for sure, but I'm pretty sure Ken Marshall is going to come in because we want to talk history of Northbridge.
Oh, that would be good.
Ooh.
And then the week after that will be our final for the year, and I have Corrine Ross coming in. We're going to talk about hypnosis from a
Interesting.
medical standpoint.
Are you going to be hypnotized?
No. We're hypnotize Troy and make him do funny things.
Thank you, Harry.
All right,
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.